Come on, buddy.
Gotta go fast!
Do you really gotta go fast? And are you morally responsible for not taking action? A few days ago, I thought I'd finally give the Sonic movie a try, but given that most video game adaptations are complete trash, I was not expecting much at all. But hey, here we are. I was completely surprised by how well done the movie is and by the fact that it actually got me thinking. And so, therefore, we'll try to answer these two questions in today's episode of Philosopher Reacts, an off-script video series where I use my philosophical knowledge and some help of a few past philosophers as well to try and answer some intriguing questions from various movies. Oh, and also, there shouldn't be any real spoilers in this video, so let's get into it.
Almost got yourself killed out there. What are you, some kind of adrenaline junkie?
Must be rough being slow all the time.
Tell you what, today is your lucky day.
So, do you really gotta go fast? And I'm not just gonna quickly dismiss this as some stupid question that was derived from the motto of a random video game character, because it's a fair question after all. Life is short. We are all going to die at some point. And so, obviously, given that there are some limits to how much time we have, most of us don't want to waste our time. We keep asking ourselves, what if I don't get everything done before I die? And so, obviously, we just want to do whatever is best for us. But what is best? Only by trying again and again can you truly know. But what if you tried the wrong things? Well, that time is never coming back. But that doesn't matter. At least I'll have the peace of mind of knowing that I've tried everything. That I made sure to run in all directions and cover as much ground as I can. That I made sure that I now know what is worth my time. But is that really worth losing oneself over? Well, this is where the movie tackles this question beautifully well. In the very beginning of this movie, we are shown that Sonic is all alone and it's all due to his speed. Because of the fact that he has to constantly hide his speed, he needs to constantly keep running. And so, obviously, he'll have no time to stop and make any real friends. And so, because of it, he ends up all alone, without anyone he can share his powers with. So, if you yourself always run at 100 miles per hour, don't be surprised if you don't find the time to get anything done. A truth that we can see when Sonic realizes how many things are in his bucket list. He realized that even though he ran so much, he never got anything real done. And so, for yourself, if you try to move too quickly through life, don't be surprised if it feels like time just flew past you. I mean, you never allowed yourself to focus on any one thing. You tried to do too much at once, and in the end, you just ended up never getting anything done. And to be honest, this movie is very relatable to our current times. Nowadays, it's so easy to get so many things done at once. To keep running and stressing out for the sake of running. But what do you really accomplish with that? If you try to get everything done at once, simply because you have the possibility to, does not mean that you should do it. Just because you can watch 3 movies at once because you have 3 monitors, again, does not mean that you should do it. Because if you do, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't be able to remember even half of at least one of those movies. And even if you did, you definitely did not have the mental capacity to pay attention to all the lessons that this movie has to provide. But what if I could, you ask? What if I could watch 3 movies at once, and even so take in all these 3 movies have to offer? Well, but what then? Even if you do watch those 3 movies, you will need to give yourself some time to rest, digest, and retrospect on whatever it is that those movies had to offer. So, even though you watch those 3 movies at once, you will need 3 times as long now for yourself to just settle down and give yourself time to digest the movies. Because if you don't do that, if you just move on to the next thing and the next thing, well, guess what? All that you're doing is that you're trying to run in various directions at once. But let's be honest, even in real life, at any given time, you can only run in a single direction. So make sure that you don't try to do otherwise, because if you do, you'll just end up spreading yourself thin enough that you'll eventually break.
I really am alone. All alone. Forever.
Maybe learn with Sonic and this movie that sometimes it's better to settle down, take things slow, and not try to overrush things. I mean, if even Sonic, a blue alien, wasn't able to do it, then how could you ever hope to? You're simply human. There are some limits on what you can and cannot do. But that is completely fine. Try to live with that and accept it. And really, what's the point of an end goal, of a finish line, if the journey wasn't enjoyable as well? And you may say, yeah, sure, but the goal has some form of benefit for me. And it may have, but the goal itself, the moment that you reach that goal, that moment, it's not something you can hold on to. Think of some skateboard trick that you were trying to achieve. Well, you tried over and over and over again and failed and hurt yourself and so on. But in the end, you finally did it. And in that moment, when you finally do it, it feels amazing. But then the moment afterwards, you ask yourself, well, what now? What's next? Well, the next goal, I guess. And that's the point. If you chase after goals and only the goals, you'll only be chasing after new goals and you will never feel satisfied. So try to enjoy the journey itself as well. I think a good comparison here would be my fiancée, for example. She, for the longest time, she wanted to have her cake and eat it too. She wanted to do it all at once. She wanted to study in a certain field, at the same time also develop a certain skill, create her own blog, and to top it off, she also wanted to become an early mom. And I had to tell her like, hey, you have to decide. You can't be an early mom, study, develop a skill, and on top of that, write a blog at the same time as well. I mean, maybe you could, but you would never become really good at any one of them. You would kind of rush through your studies, learn the skill half-assedly, only bring about one blog post a month, and on top of that, your children would probably be suffering as well. And so, for the last year and a half or so, she decided to finally focus on a few things only. On the things that are most important to her. She quit studying and started focusing on her own physical and mental health. And because of it, she's been able to do such incredible things ever since. She has gotten more done than ever before. From developing the skills necessary to create the things you see on screen right now, all the way to getting her own physical health under control. And it's this story, her story, that truly shows to me that sometimes you don't have to go fast. I get that life is short and you don't want to waste any time and make sure that you get everything done you wish to, but there's no point in getting everything done if you didn't enjoy the journey towards it. As Lao Tzu once wrote, a good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. Now, how do you deal with the anxiety that the lack of time introduces? The anxiety that death introduces? Do you maybe try and do it the way Sonic did? When he finally discovered that he was all alone, he tried to deal with the problem the only way he knew how, by running away from it. But obviously that's not a solution. So how do you do it? Well, what about the Tao? What is that, you may ask? Well, the Tao is a concept that comes from Taoism, an ancient Chinese philosophy that focuses on the flow of things, on the way things are and have always been and will probably always continue to be. It's a philosophy that focuses on trying to find out how life works, how it flows, and then try to flow with it. Sure, you may be able to shift your sails a bit to the left or to the right, but more or less you're still going with the flow. Not trying too much to just swim in all directions, spreading yourself thin, but rather just accepting that you may not have time for everything, and that's fine. Just make sure to have enough time to enjoy the things you do, to enjoy the journey towards the goal you're aiming at. And I guess that's something I had to learn as well. I mean, just look at my channel. It's been almost 3 years since I started this channel, and while I am incredibly grateful for everyone who watches my videos and all the growth I've already experienced, let's be honest here, the algorithm is doing me dirty here. But that being said, I had to learn and accept that things flow the way they flow. I may try my best to run as quickly as I can, but at the end of the day, I don't want to spread myself too thin. I don't want to cover all types of videos just to make sure that I know which one will get me to that one goal. No, not really. I want to enjoy the process, which is why I continue doing what I'm doing. Even though it takes me dozens and dozens of hours to get one video done, I enjoy it. And in my opinion, that's what really counts. And so I would really suggest to you to read books like Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching to try and understand that you can't run at full speed at all times and that, well, that's okay. Sometimes all you need to do is just slow down, take it easy, and not go fast. As Lao Tzu wrote, "Do you have the patience to wait until the mud settles and the water is clear?"
You have a power unlike anything I've ever seen. And that means someone will always want it. The only way to stay safe is to stay hidden. Never stop running. Now go!
Okay, so the scene I just showed from Sonic made me think of a very interesting concept. And it's here where I did not think that a movie like this could even make me go down such a philosophical rabbit hole. And the question I posed was, when possessing a gift, an ability, do you have to use it? Would you be morally responsible for not using it? Many would claim that opportunities are responsibilities, that with an ability comes power, and with that power comes power-hungry people who want to take that power, and because of it, a lot of responsibility comes with it too. You suddenly get to choose of whether or not you use the power for good, for bad, or not at all. And that's why some would say that yes, given that you have a possibility to help, by not using your power, you are actively choosing to allow atrocities to take place. But what if you have a gift but don't know it yet? Would that also be your fault? Would you still be responsible? After all, maybe it's likely that you haven't found out about that gift because you allowed yourself to have an easy life, and so you never push yourself enough to even find your limits and therefore the ability that you had. And so obviously, since you're the one allowing yourself to have an easy and carefree life, that would still make you responsible for not using the gift you have, even though you didn't know you had it. But obviously, as you can tell, this is quite the tricky dilemma. Maybe let's start by defining what moral responsibility even means and what is required for it to exist. Moral responsibility is, well, it's when we believe someone to be responsible for actions they took on a moral level, meaning that they were either right or wrong to act the way they did. And obviously, such a judgment would only be possible if we attribute a certain ability towards a person, and that ability would be the ability to choose. I mean, is someone really responsible for an action they could not have avoided taking? If, for example, God came to you and told you that it's an emergency, for some weird reason, you have to get your heartbeat down to 0 beats per minute, and if you don't get that done right now, 1 million people would die. Well, you couldn't get that done even if you'd like to. Even if you killed yourself, it would still take some time for your heart to stop beating. And so, would you really be morally responsible for the deaths of these people? Well, I think we can agree that obviously not. But on the other hand, what if you were one of Hitler's officers and he gave you a direct order to press a button that would kill various Jews, and you would then do it claiming that you had no other choice because you were just following orders? Would you then be morally responsible? Some people disagree, but I personally, and I think most of you would say that yes, they had the choice of acting otherwise. They could have just not pressed the button. So yes, that's why they are morally responsible. And so the question is, why will we hold one of them responsible but not the other? Well, as I said before, it's because one of them actually had a choice. And so, since they could have done differently, we judge them for not doing so. But then the question arises, did they really have a choice? Well, moral responsibility only really works if free will exists. And I've gone very deep into this topic in my Steins Gate video, and how, while it's an interesting debate, you would need godlike knowledge and capabilities to actually find out whether or not it exists. You would have to be aware to 2 different universes where everything is exactly the same and that one person had exactly the same life. But then from that point onwards, in one universe they chose one way and in the other universe they chose another way. Then you could definitely prove that free will exists. But otherwise, you can't prove whether or not it exists. And so because of it, in that Steins Gate video I make the point that whether or not it exists, it's always smart to believe that it does. I go into detail why in that video, so feel free to check it out. But for this video here, regardless of whether or not it's smart to believe in it, let's actually just ask the question, what if it doesn't exist? Well, then clearly no one would be morally responsible for anything, right? Our legal system, the way it works, would collapse completely under this assumption. And also, to try and go back to this chapter's question, if we are unaware of whether free will exists or not, and are incapable of such awareness, are we then morally responsible for punishing and judging people for a moral responsibility that they may not even have? Damn, are we responsible for not speaking out against it? Well, actually, we couldn't be morally responsible at all because we too would then lack any free will to choose to not judge them. So as you can see, it's a quite interesting and ancient debate that many philosophers have tried to tackle. From Immanuel Kant, who in his book Critique of Practical Reason claimed that humans are free to choose when their actions are governed by reason, to Aristotle, who believed that while humans have free will, they are confined by their disposition, basically their nature, that which they are subject to, all the way to British philosopher John Stuart Mill, who believed that a person is free to choose when his habits or his temptations are not his masters, but he theirs. So, while an interesting debate for sure, on which we could probably spend hours and hours talking without getting to any one conclusion, let's, for the sake of keeping this video shorter and for the sake of answering the actual question, simply assume free will to exist. And why would we assume that? Well, because if free will doesn't exist, then the answer is quite simple. It's a no. You would then obviously not be morally responsible for the actions you didn't take. But actually, neither would you be for the actions you do take. After all, you didn't have a choice at all. But if free will doesn't exist, this also puts a lot more into question. I mean, if I don't even get to choose, then what's the point of any of it? Why even ask any questions at all? I mean, the point of asking questions is to hopefully be able to find the truth and then adjust one's own life to that truth. To create a better life for yourself according to whatever the truth ends up being. But if free will doesn't exist, then you wouldn't be able to adjust anything at all. Everything you do or say was going to happen the way it did anyway. So in that sense, there's no point in asking any questions at all. And so if that's the case, then this entire thing, this video, and my whole channel, well, it would all be basically pointless. But given how many minds I've already been able to change and how much I've been able to grow myself, I just refuse such a thing to be the case. I mean, I do believe that you are influenced by your situation and your nature, but I still believe that regardless of that, you still have a choice. I like to look at it like this. Imagine yourself on a boat in the middle of a river. You can obviously change your course a bit to the left or right, but whatever you do, the flow will keep taking you forward, yes. Because also life will keep moving you forward as well. But as I just said, that doesn't mean that you can't adjust your sails. Of course you can. You can obviously not fight the way things are, but you can definitely adjust them slightly and either choose to take one path or the other. And so, going back to our question, by choosing to not change the course of your boat, are you then still morally responsible for whatever happens? You may be starting to wonder why I'm even asking this question. What does the Sonic the Hedgehog movie even have to do with it? Well, it's because of the scene I showed before. It's because Sonic has this incredible power of his, and he could have chosen to use it for good, but rather, he chooses to run, to hide his power and use it for nothing at all. And so the question I ask myself is he morally responsible for choosing not to act on something he has the option to act on? Well, as you can see, it's not that easy, right? I mean, obviously, if free will exists, as we assumed, you would then definitely be morally responsible for the actions you choose to take. The Nazi officer, for example, he could have chosen otherwise, and so therefore we judge him. But what if he had chosen otherwise? What if he refused his orders, and so because of it, Hitler went ahead and executed the order himself? Would the officer then be morally responsible for not stopping Hitler from committing this horrendous act? It's a hard question to answer, but personally, I would say that yes, under the following circumstance. Whenever there is agency. Meaning, if you are aware what your actions or inactions could lead to, then I do think that you can be held morally responsible. The officer, for example, he knows that if he does nothing, all these people will die. But if he tries to stop Hitler, he may be able to save all of them. And so he made a difficult but moral choice to not act. But even so, this is not a perfect answer. I mean, what if you believe you think what would happen, but that belief is actually misinformed and factually wrong? Let's say you promote something that ends up killing millions of people, but you actually thought it would save them all. Would that then rid you of all moral responsibility? I don't know. So, as you can see, there may not be any one answer here. While I personally believe that opportunities are responsibilities, and therefore yes, if you choose not to act, even if you maybe didn't even know of your capacity to act, you're still at least somewhat morally responsible for not acting. But hey, you may completely disagree, I know. Heck, you may not even believe in free will. My viewpoint on it is not final or absolute. It's really just meant to get you to think and to wonder what you could be capable of and what not. Because after all, the choices you make and the ones you refuse to make, both will completely redefine your life. So make sure when it comes to this question that you have an answer that works for you. To wrap this up, I'd really like to suggest all of you to read Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. It's that one book on Taoism that everyone needs to read to understand it better, and I think it has the potential to really change your perspective of life. When it comes to moral responsibility, again, it's a really hard question to answer, I am aware of that. So please let me know in the comments what your views are on both of these topics. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Over here we use philosophy and psychology to better understand life and to find our own meaning within it. There are many exciting things coming up, so if I were you, I'd subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date. See ya!
Long ago, the the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.